Let's make sure this is live. And should be good. Sweet. All right, guys. Welcome back to another episode of The Personal Collection. We have a really awesome one today. We have Peter from SGC showing off his vintage baseball cards and maybe a few other cards as well within his PC. Before we have him on the stream, a few rules as well. If you want to ask questions about SGC and grading in general, let's try to put those towards the very end. If you have questions about any of the cards or building his collection, feel free to add those during the stream. Also, we're officially group subs with SGC. The link is in the chat over to the right. If you guys want to start submitting some cards, we're going to be sharing a lot of that content on the channel. With that being said, here's Peter. Add him in. There we go.
How you doing, Ryan?
Good. How about yourself?
Good, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to get this going.
Same here. I was telling you a little bit before stream. Usually, I kind of know what someone's PC is before I have them on. This is the first time between like the personal collection before it was live and now the live streams that I have no idea what your collection is, your cards. Minus two examples, your Cobb and your T205, or your T205 Cobb and T206 Sion.
Yep, that's two of them for sure. Two of my babies.
Absolutely. So maybe tell people like how you started off collecting and then how you graduated towards pre-war side of things, because I don't think there's really any collector that starts off collecting and says, you know what, I want a Cy Young in my collection or a Ty Cobb. It's always the progression of starting modern and working your way backwards through researching.
Yeah, definitely. That's pretty much exactly what happened with me. I was born in Long Island, New York. I had a local card shop run by just the greatest guy ever, an older gentleman who was just like, man, if there were more of that kind of guy owning these card shops, the hobby would be in a great spot. But it really was love at first sight as far as cards went. You are correct. Not on the vintage side. I looked at that. If the card, you know, I grew up in an era kind of late 90s, early 2000s, where if the card didn't have something embedded in it that took place on the field, I looked at it as paper. It was like, this just is valueless altogether. I really, as I just kind of outlined, I really was into the memorabilia cards and kind of grew up in that phase when that kind of really took off. And somewhere down the line, I really, after joining SGC in particular, I just was not only fell in love with vintage, but just questioned everything I had done in cards prior. And I am definitely, I think what really helps me, honestly, kind of steer the SGC ship is I'm one of the more obsessive collectors. Like this is more than just a hobby to me. It really is something that I've done since I can remember. And it is pretty much in my blood at this point.
No, I remember the days where the jersey cards were all the rave, and still some of those one-of-ones and nice patches from old-time players are really cool. There's a few guys that watch the channel that have like the nicest collections. I mean, you could have like a jumbo patch Roy Campanella multicolors and stuff like that. And they chase those at card shows, and that type of stuff is really, really cool. But it's kind of unfortunate now, the napkins, like, people just don't go after them anymore, and they're like, whatever.
I completely agree, man. I remember the days, like I found a card shop. So when I had moved to Florida, I was about 10 years old. And the card shop in Florida had kind of a very different layout than my card shop in New York. And I remember this owner had display cases full of memorabilia cards that were each $3. Okay. And in South Florida, it was like Dontrell Willis and Juan Pierre and, you know, a bunch of lower end cards. But to get a jersey card for that kind of price was absolutely the coolest thing ever. And I would just buy as many as I could. And I really think one thing that I wish would change about the hobby, I mean, first of all, I think it is completely unacceptable, if I'm being honest, what's currently going on, putting other players, you know, jerseys and other players' cards, or just a jersey off the rack at a local sporting goods store doesn't really do it for me. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion. I don't know how in the world it could be. But I am with you on the train of kind of make relics great again. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's really a shame because you look at those value points of some of those early 90s relics or even early 2000s when everything actually said on the back game used, and sometimes you would have those Donruss products where they showed the actual jersey or bat they cut up, and then started completely changing probably like 10 years ago or something like that. Then it's like the player enclosed material. You're like, what is this crap? I did the same route. I mean, my dad, when I was collecting with him, we bought a bunch of like $1, $2, $3 cards off of eBay, but they're all Hall of Famers. And the sad thing is, like, we would buy like Frank Robinson or a Brooks Robinson or even like a Mel Ott sort of cheap. And no, Mel Ott has gone up a little bit with his jersey card prices, but still Frank and Brooke Robinson, you can find $5, $10, which seems like a bargain, especially because A, they don't have many jersey cards out there compared to a lot of the modern players, but B, some of those are game used too of legends.
Yeah, they're also the designs of the cards themselves. I mean, it's funny, total nostalgia moment when you said the piece of the picture of the jersey on the back. I remember, I think there was a set, I think it was a Leaf piece of the game or something like that always had jerseys. A lot of the time back then, bases were like that was their lazy way of doing it. Rather than grabbing another player's jersey, they take a base from the game because you could put Ichiro on it. You could put any player you want with a base. Yeah. They all touch the base.
The only exception I'll make, so National Treasures made a baseball relic of Walter Johnson, and that's his only relic out there. So you kind of forced to get it. And I think it was a shutout or something like that they grabbed the baseball from. So that's the only exception. And then I think his Leon Day has a glove relic too, which is kind of interesting. He doesn't have a jersey relic. But I think beyond those two, like, come on, give us jersey cards.
I'm with you. So while we're on the jersey card thing, I don't want to skip ahead to PC just yet, but I have some cards from one of my favorite sets as a kid, and I think it just kind of shows, it just brings all of this together that I'm going to grab right here.
Awesome. Let's see it. Then, guys, welcome to the stream. Any questions about the SGC? We're going to throw it towards the very end. If you have questions about the PC, feel free to add it.
So in 2005, okay, you didn't have Panini, you had Playoff. And Playoff made Absolute.
Oh man, those are always some really good patches on those.
Yeah. And these cards, I mean, these are cards I picked these up on eBay somewhat recently. So these aren't from my childhood, but like just for example, like, and this card's in a 7, but
the 5 or 6 pieces, right? Like the bat, jersey, jacket.
The coolest. Let me see if I can get it to focus. Just the coolest things ever. And it looks like it's not focusing. We have, let's see here. We have hat, shoe, batting glove, bat, jersey, and fielding glove. They basically took everything that the guy had even looked at during the game and threw it in a card. And to me, it was like the more the better. Like,
and they're like number to 25 or something like that, like the 5 pieces and 6 pieces too. Yeah, so exactly. Scarcity on those.
Last thing I'll say just about this set. So I was a Mets fan growing up. So there's Mike Piazza, and this here is a piece of sweatband. Just to show you how cool that set was. And when that set came out, it was the first of its kind, putting that much kind of, glitz and glamour inside the actual cards. And that set was that was one of my favorites. So that sits behind me in kind of my low end section.
With Fanatics taking over, I really wish they were going to like revamp all the memorabilia side of things and give us those type of sets.
I will say this: anyone watching, we recently partnered with Topps to offer a really, really cool and kind of fun special on Bowman Chrome. Some of those folks over at Topps I've spoken to before. Some I met for the first time. I am extremely confident in that team. I think all great things take time, just because, let's face it, there's been so much change in this industry, whether it's the grading companies or the card manufacturers, obviously. There's a lot of things in motion currently, but I am confident that kind of they'll right the ship in those few ways that I think things got a little wacky there.
I really hope so. That'd be really good, at least for the memorabilia side.
For sure.
So going into SGC, you mentioned how that kind of influenced your pre-war side of things. Was it like a T206 card? Was it some old Judge cards, or just seeing 50s through 70s vintage baseball in specific that kind of changed you? Like, I got to learn more about this.
Honestly, man, you don't even know. I mean, working at SGC back then was absolutely insane to me. I mean, I basically walked in, I applied for a customer service position because I just wanted my foot in the door. And upon meeting me in the interview and hearing me like kind of scream and shout and get all red in the face talking about my love of cards, they're like, this guy is not working in customer service. We're putting him on the operation. They basically started training me in research and ID, which is a department that we still have today. And like, man, I've had a lot of amazing experiences at SGC, but in particular, I remember those first few days working here. It was literally my job to identify cards. And it was just the coolest thing in the world. I mean, seeing, that many Koufax rookies, Clemente rookies, it's hard to even call it pre-war because it's so not just pre-war. I mean, seeing things like, I remember seeing, the Hires root beer set and being like, whoa, I did not even, like, cards are so much cooler than I even thought,
The three versions, the test issue and also with the tab as well.
Exactly. And, it's hard to even pinpoint a set, man. And that's why I pulled those cards off the wall, because what I'm about to show off are all cards of somewhat a similar, I don't know, you could tell these are all collected by the same collector, but there's so many different versions of collecting in me, if that makes sense, where again, the cards behind me are very different than the cards that I'll be showing off. And I even have some cards at home that are very different than those. So as I told you before, it's hard to find a trading card that I don't have some level of appreciation for, and it's yeah, they mean a lot to me. Ask my wife.
They mean it for all collectors. And before we jump in there, I actually had a question about research and ID. So how does that work when you guys get brand new cards or some sets that you haven't seen before, or like none of the grading companies have graded, nothing on like a trading card database or anything like posted on Net54? How do you guys do the research on those type of cards?
Yeah, man, that's the most awesome part, because remember, our database is so unbelievably extensive, and there are so many sets out there and cards. In fact, there's new sets being discovered, primarily right now in vintage soccer and things like that, because of, the passion for those cards has just kind of come to light recently. But the way that it would basically be is, imagine I would type in, let's say I have a 52 Bowman Mantle. Okay, so I type in Mantle 101 to our website, and I have the hits right there. Okay, so it's basically card number and name. And what that allows is, imagine that's almost like a multiple choice test, where our system would then generate all of the cards in it that in any way, shape, or form associate the number 101, the card number, with Mickey Mantle. Where it got really fun is when we had never graded the card before, because that's when it was my job to decide how this company that I thought was like just so freaking cool to be a part of, how my company would label that card moving forward. So when that collector got back that card, it said X. And when anyone else sent in that card ever again, it said that same thing. And that was like so awesome to me. So naturally, we have almost like a certain format, imagine, certain policies constructed around consistency, accuracy, and things like that, just to make sure that we're not just throwing names at things haphazardly, obviously.
Nice. And then like some really obscure stuff. I assume that you guys have a bunch of reference books and look through them like, all right, this person has documented these sets before, so this is actually what it should be called.
Yeah, reference books, contacts at times. There is a tremendous amount of research, even still today, that goes into cards. Old judges. We recently, in the last probably 3-4 years, changed the way that we label those cards. New information was brought to light in the hobby. We took that information in. We felt that we should kind of act upon that new information and evolve. So we started labeling old judges differently, and I can tell you they used to be a lot easier than how we do it now.
Especially with all the different years that you have them. I mean, from 86 to pretty much 89, and then the specific imagery on there, the text determine, okay, this was actually 86 or 87 or 88 or 89 or later on.
Exactly. So, I mean, as you can imagine, Ryan, imagine picking up a stack of cards and there's like a modern card on top. Well, back then there really wasn't many of those, if I'm being honest with you. But imagine it was, 55 Koufax, 54 Aaron, 51 Mays, 51 Mantle, all in the same order. I mean, like that job doesn't suck for sure.
No, it does not. And that's the beauty of going to card shows too. It's like you see all those type of cards all the time at dealers. You're like, all right, this guy has all 4 different Goudey roots just, hang on his showcase. That's pretty impressive there. And you go to another table, and at least on like the modern side of things, they might have some RPAs of some really good players. And you go to another dealer, they might have some really cool old non-sports stuff that you don't really see that often.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, I was walking through the operation today, and I saw an order a guy had. It It was a Leaf Jackie. It was a 51 Bowman Mantle. What else was it? A Leaf Jackie, a 51 Bowman Mantle, a 33 Goudey Fox, and just some other really high-end cards. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I get such a rush when I buy a card off eBay or off an auction house that's already great. I know what I'm getting, you know, and the day that it arrives, I still have like butterflies. I can't even imagine being someone who's sending those cards in raw and waiting to see their grading results on that. That's just got to be a wild experience that honestly I've never experienced myself. And that's just like, talk about a rush for me. So that it's definitely cool.
It's even more nerve-wracking if you go buy that card raw at a show for $5,000 or whatever, and it is based on the condition. You're like, all right, time to send it in. Let's see what it grades. And especially like a half of a point or a full point can swing at thousands of dollars. It's very interesting.
It's pretty wild. The one cool thing before we get off the topic of my time in the research and ID department is that I have a pretty kind of a skill that I haven't seen anyone else have, which is that I can match card numbers to cards off the top of my head like crazy. I mean, granted, it's got to be a prominent subject, a prominent card, but card number for me holds a special place because that was my tool to find the information that I was looking for.
See, I can't do that, but I at least know the hack where all the stars are 5 or 0. So then you know right away.
There you go. Mantle in particular. That was the worst one, actually, because everything's 150 and 50, you know, the 64 and the 66. That was always something I had to take a second look at.
Besides rookie cards, it's super easy when going through stacks. All right, flip them over and look for those 5s and 0s. All right, here's all your stars and everything.
Fun as well because Henderson and Gwynn, the 482. It's always fun when those things collide. You know, Yastrzemski and Walter Payton, 148, for example. And these things don't matter. These are just card numbers and sets. But to a geek like me, there's some kind of weird joy you get out of it.
No doubt there. Well, how about we start seeing some of the cards in your PC?
Awesome. Where do I lead?
What should be number one?
Yeah. So the card I'll lead off with is the card that I shared on my Instagram. So this card actually came through SGC's doors when I worked here as a reholder. Okay. And I saw the card and thought to myself, I think it was the first time I'd ever seen a Cy Young glove shows, because remember, I was not a vintage collector when I joined SGC originally. And I was just like, holy cow. I mean, this is like Cy Young. And this card was collected when Cy Young was on the mound being Cy Young. And this card's artwork was constructed in the year 1910. It was just mind-blowing. So basically what ends up happening is the card goes to auction. I saw it auction. I could not afford it at the time. The card ends up being won by someone else. Years later, it's on eBay. I found that same card, and I just could not let it go. At the time, I still couldn't afford it, but I couldn't lose it either. So that's my glove shows Cy Young.
An impressive grade too, the 5.5.
Yes, and you'll see.
You do not see those every day.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And what you'll see on this card that you'll see on all my cards is if you look at the actual image, it is always going to be crisp with beautiful registration. That is every collector is different. And the great way about cards and the hobby is there's no wrong way to collect. There's no right or wrong answer. It's simply on preference. My preference is if the player has 3 eyes or there's some weird coloration happening, I'm out on it. It doesn't matter if the corners are as sharp as a pencil. I want nothing to do with it. But when it comes to this, I'm in every time. And that's the kind of image. Like, look at that glove, guys. Like,
it looks really good, even with the reflection a little bit.
Well, and it's a common back, Piedmont back, but even the backs I find, I don't know, fascinating. Really cool.
Well, even with the collectors, they argue whether like a coupon back should be a T206 or its own standalone release. And then you look at the 3 different types and distributions on those. You're like, all right, 1909, 14, and 19. So you kind of have those oddballs in there too. Then you have like the Red Sun backs as well, which is different release, but you have this very similar images on the front, Red Cross, and then all the others too, like the Ty Cobb. So it's kind of funny though. Like this weekend, I was talking to a dealer who once had the Ty Cobb back on the Ty Cobb. And this is like 70s and 80s. He sold it for only like $100 or $200. But back then, that's a lot for a Cobb. I was telling him how much the Lucky 7 find was going for. And he was like,
It's wild, man. I do think though backs. I think backs are very underrated. Just in that, obviously, Drum, Lennox, all the great ones. Everyone pays a premium for those, but I think there's also an appreciation to be had just for all of them in general. Like if even the stamp on the back isn't, I don't know, pretty looking, it gets me a little bit. I want that to be beautiful.
Well, it's like this scarcity for pre-war cards. People always talk about how like gold refractors or a black refractor or a red refractor is artificial scarcity. But like if you look all the way back to the T206 cards, and there's other releases too, like the M101s, like they all have different backs associated with them, which is their own form of scarcity. Like it's always been in the hobby. It's not something brand new that the card companies developed.
Exactly.
Speaking of back, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that is exactly how we train here, Ryan. That's how I try to inject passion in people that may not have as much knowledge over the hobby as we do. I explained to them, I know you guys understand the gold refractors out of 50, and the blues out of 150, but now imagine that these bats represent almost like serial numbers, except they weren't thought out to be that way, which is so much cooler. By the way, they're 110 years old. So it's there. I'm with you, man. There's a reason I'm on this channel and as excited as I am because you do it right, man.
And I'll say what's always interesting about T206 cards, and there's a few other sets that do it. It's like one of the few brands where people will sometimes have the cards flipped over backwards and not even mention the player and just say, this is a drum back. This is what the price is. It's always funny seeing that. Like, I know we talked a little bit about you guys might be going to Philly, but there's a dealer there that literally has a bunch of rare T206 backs, and that's exactly how he displays them. He has all the rare backs out there. Doesn't even mention who the player is. You're paying for the back itself.
Yeah, look, and it's similar in modern if you think about it. If someone's looking to put together either, I guess it wouldn't be a rainbow because you'd have the player in mind there. But, if you're collecting the, I don't know, the '07 Topps Chrome Superfractor, set, which would probably be costly, but something a little more toned down. Let's say it was, a different parallel. It would make sense that you're not necessarily a fan of the player who played 12 total minutes in his career, but you need that card to complete the subset that you're building, for example.
So I do have one question on here, and we have Travis talking about the different types of back stamps. I was actually made aware today. I mean, there's a few different prominent collectors that make a little bit of extra on the T206 cards. Has SGC ever thought of like labeling specific back stamps from prominent collectors?
In what sense? Prominent collectors as if almost provenance to
yeah. So like if all the different types of I'm not an expert on them by any means, but I know I have a few T206 cards in my collection that are stamped by collectors. Like let's say there's like this stamp is X collector, this stamp is Y collector, and a little provenance for being a collector, in the throughout the 50s or 60s or 70s, like one of those pioneers that started early on. Have you guys thought about like ever labeling those?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. And I think if executed effectively, it would be really cool. That's the thing about being a grading company. There are so many cool things that we don't do, but most of them are for really good reason because it opens the door. Remember, an idea is really cool until we get it wrong. And you're the one with that card, and now we have to work out it's a mess, basically. We don't like getting it wrong, and we don't like stepping into things that we don't feel 100% confident in. I do agree. That would be absolutely awesome. But I do also want to add that we've also labeled certain cards that have come from some of the most iconic collections of all time. We have definitely, put that on the label just to talk about who owned what card, if that makes sense.
That does. I still regret not buying. I went to the Philly non-sports show, I don't know, like a year ago, and one of the dealers had a verdict card, and I still regret not buying it. I'm like, man, I should have just bought it for the stamp just to have like that piece of collection in my PC. But I still regret it.
At this point, it's been documented kind of like who collected what. The same way I said that I'm a guy for like the image quality on the vintage cards. But, I believe Burdick was the one, if I'm not mistaken. Was Burdick the one that loved the extreme high condition or the extreme rarities?
I think he might have had a mixture of both. I know he documented everything, and he has his whole collection in the Met Museum, and they cycled through it. And you can find a lot of the images online, and they look really nice. But then again, when he was collecting, right, you can find that like high grade still out there, and people aren't going to ask six figures for like something that would be like a 7, 8, or a 9. Buys it probably for a few dollars or even less. So let's take a look at your next card.
Okay, let's do. I'll start here. So, yeah, basically, this card, my buddy was at a card shop and found this card, and he wasn't even a big card guy, but he sent me a picture of it. And when I saw the image quality on this, I was like, yeah, can you snag that for me? And basically, I picked up this 49 Bowman Jackie. I wish this glare wasn't here. Let's see if I can take this.
Try tilting it a little bit.
You're the pro. I don't. This is my first rodeo, man. There you go.
If you tilt like that, it works a lot better. Yeah.
So, yeah, super great image. I mean, the card really presents more like probably in the range of even a 3.5. When you tilt it in the light, you'll see it's got a really rough surface. I mean, in addition to being pretty much wrinkled throughout, it's got some kind of substance. It looks like almost like a waxy glue like material that doesn't really affect me when I hold it like this. So that's why I love my 49 Bowman Jackie. And in that same kind of way, in that same shop, I picked up this, which
What
is
a good shop, right?
one, I thought. And if you notice, it has, where is it? That's a pinhole right there, okay, which is why it got the grade of the 1. But the pinhole sits, it doesn't cover the Yankee logo, but it kind of sits right near it, and it just blends. If you look at it from like this distance, I don't know, maybe.
I couldn't even tell that there was a pinhole on it.
I love, people like stack gold, like bullion. They like to just continuously, onboard bullion into their portfolio. And I like to do the same thing with vintage. As long as it's got a good image, I don't care if it's a 1 or an 8, if I could afford it. I want to own it. So yeah, those two are some of my lower grade vintage. Most of my vintage is lower grade, but they all look nice.
I did that with my Sears Goodwin Champs. There was a small pinhole on it, but like everything else looked really nice. The registration was great. Like this doesn't come out that often. As soon as I saw it on eBay, I was like, buy it now. All right, here we go.
Totally.
Have to on those.
Yeah.
Let's see.
That 34 Gehrig, by the way, one thing I could say about it that really fascinated me. The other weekend, I spent time. I had kind of an open Sunday, and I put together a spreadsheet of the SGC pop report and the PSA pop, okay, to create a total number of cards submitted. And let's face it, guys, the hobby's, the grading aspect of the hobby is 25, 30 years old right now. So these cards have been tossed around from company to company historically. So each pop report tends to be inflated naturally. There's less cards even than are reflected. And the 34 Gehrig, I chose a few vintage cards. The 34 Gehrig, besides the T227 Cobb, which is one of my favorite cards in the hobby, was the rarest card, the lowest pop card, submitted to both PSA and SGC combined, which I just thought was cool. And I mean, this card, by the way, like just to not lose, look how like that card is, I don't know.
Super iconic. I mean, he was the face of 34 Goudey. They didn't have Ruth in there. So when you think about it, like the Yankees, how popular they were selling the set, and Gehrig multiple cards in there that when we look at 34 Goudey, you can just picture them in your head.
Yeah, not to mention, I mean, just the way that the Lou Gehrig says on every.
Yep.
And again, I apologize if I'm shoving this down your throats, guys. But I mean, that Lou Gehrig says on the back, for anyone who doesn't know, and I assume you all do if you're watching this video, let's face it. But if you don't know, you basically have a quote from Lou Gehrig on the back telling you about the player on the front, and I just thought that, like, I don't know, vintage is just something special.
It's all the cards in there, but 12 or 24. I can't remember. It's that last series in 34 Goudey.
Right. And then it's not Pike. No, not Pike. Who is it on?
Is it Coiler? No, it's hold on. Let's see who it is.
You're looking for the other quote.
Yeah, there's only one Hall of Famer in there. Maybe it was Coiler that was the Hall of Famer. That was in that last series. I can't remember. Oh, it's Chuck Klein.
Chuck Klein.
There we go. I had to look at it.
That's right. But yeah, so that 34 Gehrig card is one of my favorite in the hobby for sure.
Definitely iconic. Do you have any other 33 or 34 Goudeys, or is that your one in your PC?
I do. I actually have quite a few. Now I'll jump, I guess, over to a different 34 Goudey, which is also my man Gehrig, and that's the yellow
one. That's the one I always think of.
Yeah,
about the set right there.
This card was on eBay, and by the way, guys, I've lost money on every card I've ever bought because I'm the collector who's overpaying for these crazy eye appeal, cards. And I probably paid for this card. I probably paid the price of like a 5, if not even higher, just because I thought the image was really special. There's no, there's actually one sitting on eBay right now that I've had my eye on, but it's kind of got like a print line right there, which kind of bothers me. And this thing I found is just super clean. It's well centered. To me as well, another kind of preference that I have, and I think a lot of people share this, left-right centering being off affects me far more than top-bottom. And if I want bottom or top, I definitely would rather it centered towards the bottom, which I'll show you. I don't want to go too fast, but I guess I'll show the next card, which is this Ruth. And this is a perfect example where to my eye just like loves the way this thing looks, but it's quite off-center top.
You can see it top, yeah.
But yeah, let me take this one out of the bag. I'm getting excited here. I don't know if I'm going too fast or whatever it is, but
no, you're doing really good with it.
Good. So that's my Ruth. And I mean, come on, like look at that. Like, what else do you want in a car? Like who cares about the corners, man? Look at that thing. It
looks so good.
3 years old. It's beautiful. So I'm a big fan. You'll also notice I love the grade of 3. What I find, obviously, the grade is at SGC at least, it's a technical scale mixed, imagine, kind of with a balance with an, call it, I don't want to say an eye appeal based scale, but it's kind of that at the end of the day. And I find that the grade of 3, for whatever reason, you get these cards with kind of these wagon wheel corners, but these amazing looking cards, whether there's a wrinkle or not, it really doesn't bother me. So you'll notice I have a lot of 3s. That's like my favorite grade, if that makes sense.
So on the technical side of things, I know you've mentioned quite a few times centering and also registration. In wrinkles, I know automatically, this is my assumption, right? I don't know for sure, but a wrinkle is automatically down to a 3.
No.
So you can get higher than the 3 with the wrinkle.
Yeah, fairly significantly, actually. I mean, again, certain cards, it's so difficult to paint with such a broad brush here on just how many different combinations of cards you could have, which, by the way, guys, is how some of the smartest people in the world still have not figured out, nor are they really close to figuring out AI grading, because there's just endless combinations of these things, and cards are 3D objects rather than 2D objects. But the reason I'm saying it is because if you have a literal mint card that has a wrinkle, if it's on the back, you could get, I'd say, at least a 1.5 higher. I mean, we would put a 4 or 5 easy. I think I've seen 5s on cards with slight wrinkles on the back, but that front has to be like
very nice,
basically, but certainly what we will always tell, let's say, a member of our QA department, when looking over quality, if you see a wrinkle and there's a 7 on that card, like something is very wrong, that kind of thing. But it's also a misconception if the hobby is under the assumption that unless my card's a 3, there won't be a wrinkle. It could be higher than that, but it wouldn't be in the 6, 7 range.
Do you think that rumor is from like the wrinkle going through a face or going through the front of the card? Like, obviously that makes a bigger of an impact than on the back.
Oh, huge. Look, there could be one wrinkle on the card, and the card could be in a 1-5 or even a 1 if it splits the guy's eyes, and it goes down the whole card, which is another reason why I talk about how difficult it is to grade with an algorithm, because one wrinkle on the back could be a 4, 5, or even a pushed 5, and a wrinkle down the front could that same wrinkle on the front in a bad area could mean a significantly lower grade, and the bad area is often even made up by the card's qualities themselves, and think about it. We grade to the hobby, we grade to the collector, or else what else, what are we here for? if we're not taking into account the way people collect. And at the end of the day, think about for you, Ryan, if you know, Mantle has a big wrinkle going down his face,
Maybe high grade, no.
it bothers you a little more than if that wrinkle is, you know, down by the you know, lower left edge or whatever it is.
So a little bit more technical, but I collect a lot of music stickers, and there's quite a few that come from Brazil. But the thing that's interesting about Brazil stickers is when they're put into packs, they're already folded in half. So how does that affect your grading scale? I know obviously like on the AI side of things, if any company did AI, like you have to know the specific release, like, all right, well, it's supposed to have this crease over there and build all the documentation. But at least on your guys' side of things, those wrinkles, or if you go back into like the diamond match books in the 1930s with football cards, since they have the staples in them, they already have holes in them. So like, how do you guys adjust your grading scale to different things like that?
So the way, generally speaking, again, it's super difficult to just talk about, you know, literally hundreds of thousands of different cards out of thousands of sets in a few sentences. But generally speaking, the way it would work, Ryan, is imagine if the entire set was produced that way, then we will grade to the way the set is produced. So imagine a perfect card would be the most perfect kind of, how would I say it? The most perfect version of a card that you could reasonably expect out of that product, you know, which makes sense because a diamond matchbook naturally is not a 2.5 by 3.5 card. And to grade them on a 1-in-1 is just the most dysfunctional way you could be going about it. So the key thing is that for those Brazilian stickers that you talked about, which I'd be lying if I said I had firsthand knowledge of, but if that's the case, Ryan, and they all come with that bend in half, as long as you are correct and all of them come that way, then naturally we wouldn't look at that as something that's affecting the condition of that card, you know, based on the original, I guess, item itself out of the pack.
So the other thing that's unique about Brazil sticker cards, and I know it impacts both soccer and music and other non-sports, is the backs actually peel off on those cards when people put them into albums. So unlike like a Carmelo de Pivorito or Propaganda's Montiel, where most of those collectors would paste it in and you could soak those albums out and get them off, like if people peel them off, they have no back. So like if SGC is grading these type of cards, would you guys have two designations on it, like back peeled off and then give it a numerical grade? Or in that case, would they all be A's? But like I see it also, some of those A's will have creases or may have a ripped corner versus other ones which are got out perfect from the album, but just don't have the back and don't have that luxury of some of those other Cuban releases or Latin America releases.
Yeah, I mean, I remember even when I joined SGC, you know, basically doing the work on old judges. A lot of those are skinned. Okay, we would refer to those as skinned, and it's a very similar idea. You know, when getting into the way that a specific set, you know, if there's glue on the back or something like that, how we would handle that, that's a little difficult for me to talk about. Just not being, honestly, I do not have the qualifications of a head grader by any means. As you can probably tell, I'm a card guy. That's why I'm in this seat, and that's how we choose to run kind of our show here with a true hobbyist at the helm. But at the same time, I'm not the head grader, so I don't want to overspeak here. But the way in general that things like that work, it's not out of the question that if our grading team is under the impression that a card may have been soaked out to you know, take it out of an album, there are many times we're not going to refer to that as altered, but we may actually knock it a grade down as kind of a penalty point, if that makes sense. And likewise, if we see something on a card where it looks, it's just undoubtedly original, we give that a bump. Okay, so one thing, we graded a Jordan rookie, a pristine gold label 10 a few years back, and a lot of people, you know, wanted to hear about it, know what the card was like. And in addition to the card being in truly pristine condition, what even gave it that extra oomph, I guess, is we were just ultra confident that this card has not been touched or tampered with in any way. Because let's face it, guys, the people that are applying these alterations to cards, they know what they're doing, okay? And it is very difficult to tell sometimes. So when you get a card like this, and again, I'm kind of jumping ahead. But
No, you're good.
If you get a card like this that I'm about to show you, so this card has really big, fat borders. This thing is big, okay? This thing to a grader, if I held this up to an SGC grader and I said, that look trimmed to you? They'd be like, they'd laugh at me. This is not trimmed. This is not trimmed. Now, another card, if I said, does this look trimmed to you? They might have to really pick up their loop and look at the striations on the edge and study it. But if they're giving that laugh feedback where it's like, dude, this ain't trimmed, they might give it a 0.5 bump because it's just, you know what? This is as fresh as a piece of cardboard can come in our hobby. And any collector should know that, if that makes sense. And if we're not baking that into this final grade that we're kind of awarding this card, once again, we don't feel like we're grading right. We're not helping the hobby the right way, the best that we can. So I guess generally speaking, it's not a, it's not always linear. It's not always, comparable, if that makes sense. It really is a science mixed with an art form.
And those T206s are tough because all those different factories cut them. Like you have some of them that are narrow, and the example where you had was pretty large borders.
Yeah, an American Beauty back, for example, of that card would not look like this. And that, by the way, just get a better look. Look at
is that right there? Yeah.
So this one, I think I purchased this from REA, and this is my highest graded card. And once again, I mean, I saw this come up, and I was like, wow. And yeah, that's one of my favorites for sure.
That's a beauty.
Beautiful cards in the hobby, actually. The Cobb bat off shoulder.
A 5.5 Cy Young and a 6 Cobb. That's impressive. You don't see those every day.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you're like me, I drive the same car I did when I joined SGC. Believe me, it all goes to my card collection. I have honestly little interest in anything else besides being a good enough husband to hopefully have my wife not regret marrying such a card geek.
That's where all my free money goes. I'm like, all right, I need to find this new non-sports or baseball or cricket or golf or whatever I'm collecting in the day. All right, time to grab that card.
Yeah, exactly, man. Me and my wife are in the middle of not a move, but we're kind of starting house hunting. And I made very clear that where we move is really up to you. I just need a card room. So
that's what I finally got. This is my card room right here. It's not, I don't have the wall built out and everything like that. We just moved out about a month ago in here, and like, all right, first thing we got to do is set up all the lights, paint the backdrop, and then over the next few months I'm going to build that out.
Yeah, very cool.
But yeah, let's take a look at some more.
Cool. So I've shown my Rook, my Gehrigs, my Cobb, my Jackie. So then we'll go. So this I showed off on Instagram as well, I think. I'm not very good at keeping up with posting. So that's my T205 Cobb. I wish I could get a better look for you guys. Hopefully that's clear.
No, you can see it pretty well.
Yeah, and the story is the same on this. I mean, basically it's got as crisp an image. If you look at T205 Cobbs, guys, regardless of what the centering looks like, the corners or the edges look like, the image itself, Cobb has like 4 eyes in some cards, and the coloring of his face is all kind of out of the lines that it was meant to be drawn in. And what I love about this, that T205, is that the image of Cobb is like a work of art, basically. And the card's off center. It actually, again, has, I don't know what the material is. It has some kind of material on the surface that kept it from an even higher grade. Because really, this card kind of presents as more of like a 5 even.
It looks really nice.
It is. Yeah, no, thank you.
I mean, people don't realize, if you're not familiar with T205 cards, they're kind of like the 71 tops or like Ogden cards where anything shows. And also they get discolored over time as well, like if they're not kept in good condition. So like, yeah, getting those in high grades, that's why they go for so much money.
That's a great point. So guys, if you breathe on those gold borders, they will chip. And if they chip, you can definitely see it. So that's for sure.
And with your grading scale, there's obviously, I wouldn't say obviously, but is there some leniency on that side of things with those specific years with the colored borders?
On T205s, I think what it is that on that those gold borders, okay, they bring out so much. So you may be able to see like a really high grade T205, let's say in a 7, with some edge wear that you just wouldn't expect to be on a 7, but it's really the same amount of edge wear as your 55 Koufax. It just is brought to light a little more, if that makes sense. So
you can't see it under the, I mean, you'd see it under the loop, but like in at a card show, you wouldn't be able to see it.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, basically, what we keep in mind is what I just said, that you breathe on those edges and they chip. But at the same time, a traditional tobacco card like that, if there's edge wear, we naturally would knock it, or you'd see a bunch of T205s and 9s, which is not the case.
And that'd be a sight to see, just seeing it like a 9 raw in person. Like, okay, I got to be extremely careful on that side of things.
I get to see them. I don't own them, but I get to see them come through, which is always really cool.
Well, you still have that luxury, though. Do you have any other T205s in your PC, or just the Cobb?
I don't, man. I don't. I'm looking to add a speaker for sure. I love that card. I think it's beautiful. I was the underbidder on a few. I still have yet to snag a really nice looking speaker T205. I think the Mathewson T205 is gorgeous. I have a friend who's got an amazing, I think it's an SGC 5, but it's just gorgeous. Another amazing set. And again, for anyone a little newer, you guys can see there's like baseball equipment on each card. It's got the Tigers with a little tiger printed. Man, I need work at this, guys. Holy cow. Right there. And it's just an awesome set. And then even on the back, whenever I'm trying to explain cards to family members or friends that don't have the same appreciation as me, I tell them, read the back of it. And the English, like it's not the way we talk today. Let's say
it's not.
It paints the picture of how historical these cards are, which is really cool.
No, it's funny enough that Christy Mathewson was like my first big trade at a card show. I ended up picking up a 3 at Dallas. I ended up trading away a Ernie Banks rookie card and like a stack of like 5 or 6 50s through 70s. And I still have that Christy in my PC. The one I really want to have eventually, and I don't know why, it just always escaped me, is the Addy Joss because of the tribute card to him. I think I don't know for sure if that's like the first tribute card per se. I have to do a lot more research on it, but at least for that set with the historical significance and how well he was as a pitcher, like imagine if he had a full career. He died at 29 or 30, and back then pitchers threw quite longer than they do today.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Addy Joss is a really cool player, and I think his T206s in particular, he's got some gorgeous T206s as well. And I think it's the same pose on the T3, the Turkey Red set, where it's kind of like hands at chest, and there's like a nice little sunsetting sky behind him and that kind of thing. So I agree. I think Addy Joss is actually so many players are so underrated. He's one of them for sure.
And like speaker too. So many people don't realize how good he was until you look at his counting stats.
Yep, you're right.
Very, very good.
Yep.
I will say the one thing I regret about Turkey Reds, I wish they were smaller. Like if they were the size of like a T206 or T205 or maybe like a little bit of a larger card, like can you imagine how much they would be going for in the hobby today, especially with that artwork in there between the baseball players and also the boxers?
Yeah, look, I definitely agree. I think that for that set, I mean, it's probably not a great set to collect the set if you're short on space, but especially like a type collector to just snag one and just have it anywhere in your house, whether it's, I'm going to get one. That's for sure. I want either, I think I take a Cy Young, a Walter Johnson. There's no way I'm going to afford a Cobb because I'd rather almost not get it if I don't love the way it looks, if that makes sense. In other words, I'd rather a beautiful Johnson than an ugly Cobb, even if the values are comparable. That's just me. But yeah, the Turkey Red set is always a fun one to teach at our company. Just do the amazing, again, graphics, history behind it with the different backs and that kind of thing. This one's an add back. That's the checklist. This has the offer, that doesn't. So yeah, it's a really cool set.
I think the one that I want eventually is the Jack Johnson.
Yeah.
Super important boxing card there.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to have a grandfather still who's very supportive of me and is probably watching this video right now. So love you, Gramps, if you're out there. But he's gotten really into boxing cards, actually. And we went out to the diner last night, actually, and he always brings me what he bought on eBay recently to show it off. And he's been buying up a lot of boxing. So shout out to Grandpa there.
Nice. My dad is also in that type of stuff. He's actually in the chat talking right now. He's asking if you ever collect historian cards like Thomas Edison or Ben Franklin or pioneers and tobacco cards.
I actually, let me see if I have. I just have Here's one. I mean, just it's raw right now. One day I'll have to give this thing a home. But the bottom line is that came to mind. I actually have not. Is the answer. I have not, and I think that I definitely would love to. What I try to do, I understand I can't buy every card out there, or I literally would.
That's the toughest part about collecting.
Exactly. So, but it's also motivating, which is really cool. So I try to kind of stick to what I love most. But I saw earlier you posted a Ben Franklin. I mean,
yeah. So that's it. I'm actually building out that set, the 1887 Lone Jack Inventors. So there's 25 of them.
Yep.
Talked to two guys that completed the set. One did it in like 5 or 10 years. Another person took them over 20 years because they're all like less than 5 or 10 of those out there.
And that's why I love cards like that, because I get asked all the time, kind of when talking about the bigger picture of the hobby, or how we can grow the pie and bring in new blood, new people that appreciate these things like you and I do. And I really always lean on the non-sports kind of interesting issues, because not everyone has an appreciation for Addy Joss. Like, let's face it, Ryan and a lot of the folks watching here, like, we're,
They don't know who he is. Yeah.
A little weird, but that's okay. We're all here together. But the bottom line is that with the non-sports sets, it allows for just a lot more diversity, variety, for more people to enjoy. The Topps Look and See set, for example,
too, a classic.
I'm
surprised the Look and See isn't as popular as it is, especially for being so early in Topps history.
I totally agree. You have Babe Ruth in it. You have Rembrandt in it. It's like it's a really really cool set. I think if I collected a set, that might be one that was on the list.
It's a definitely doable set, though. I mean, the Rembrandt is a little bit expensive, but it's not super expensive for kind of being like a tougher card to find.
Yeah, same as, I mean, if anyone out there wants a Ruth card,
not too bad
card, that's one of the best you can get.
So I know this question has probably been asked every time you're on a live stream or anything like that, and we're just talking about sets. But Hunter, he's on Twitter all the time. He says, "Well, SGC have a registry soon?" We have a vintage chat, and like everyone always asks, like, "Man, one day SGC needs to make a registry."
Right. So first off, I've gotten that question a lot. So the thing at SGC that's the best right now, guys, is if you haven't noticed, the hobby is starting to stabilize, which is really, really healthy. And what it allows me to do is finally take a break from just scaling endlessly essentially, and allows me to kind of focus more of our resources on making things better for those that are already here and enjoy our services. So the bottom line is this: what's going to happen next, okay? I'm just going to kind of reveal my hand here. We're going to be releasing an app, okay? That app, the only reason it hasn't been released yet is because I wasn't happy enough with it, honestly, to roll it out there. The app is going to be a really, what I hope you all agree, I think it's a really cool feature for any SGC collector. And in that app, we're going to definitely be incorporating different ways that you can kind of interact with your collection digitally. It's not a registry. I want to make that clear. It is not a registry, and I'm not trying to convince you it is, but I am here to say that is certainly a good step just to kind of sweeten the deal a little bit. So we're not only just getting our cards back, but at the same time, I can promise you that we will be having a registry, and that essentially we're in the middle of a move here. We're moving to a killer office space. A registry is coming, guys. I don't like to lie to you. I really don't. So I'm not going to say it's coming on this date because I can't right now, but I will say this. We have an app coming that hopefully could just hold you over until that registry comes. But to anyone that is still waiting, sincere apologies, guys. It's just you got a bad shake. What ended up happening is, imagine right when we're ready to step up to the plate and make this registry, the whole company goes kaboom, and we blow the heck up, thanks to all of you, which is incredible. But we've just been trying to really maintain what honestly matters most, which is the integrity of the product under very difficult circumstances where we have to scale extremely rapidly. And I'm sitting here today extremely proud of the job that we've done. I happen to think that our team is currently grading the most consistently in the hobby.
You guys always do a great job. Like, I never have questions when I look at the card and go, how did that get that specific grade, whether it's way too high or low? Like, I send in stuff, I'm usually at 0.5 to a point, always on the dot.
Yeah, look, and that's amazing to hear, honestly, for people like us that work, like we work so hard for that to be the case. And I have to say as well, another thing that is always kind of my favorite part about it, I'm not gonna lie, I have graded cards before. I don't grade cards often with other companies naturally. I don't grade cards really, but I've done it before. And I'm not gonna say who, and I'm not gonna say what the card was even, but I literally felt like they didn't look at it. Like, and that's the one thing that is just something that I don't care if you agree with the grade or not, guys. And I'm sure a lot of you will disagree with the grade. The one thing I promise all of you, because we built this place ourselves, is that we look at your cards. We want to get the grade right so badly. It means so much to us. And even if you think we maybe didn't give you the grade that you were hoping for, or you think your card legitimately deserves, the one thing you'll never have to fear at SGC is that the cards that you're paying good money for and good money in grading fees for are being overlooked. Almost like, screw it, it's a 4, or screw it, it's an 8. It doesn't work that way. We really take the job extremely seriously. And hopefully all of you feel that. I really do. That is my hope, that you all share in that, you can kind of see me there, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a look at some more cards.
Awesome. Let's do Amaze Rookie. By the way, guys, I feel like the way I'm presenting these makes it look endless. These are all my quality cards, so believe me, I'm no gazillionaire just rolling in it. That's for sure. But these are my favorite.
Number 3.
What I have. Another 3, and you'll notice kind of the same thing, that's a good looking 3. Naturally,
pretty good centering overall too.
Absolutely. On the 51 Bowman Mazes, you see those roller marks, kind of those print-like line things. A lot of the time as well, what I loved about this one is in that black box that kind of distinguishes the 51 Bowman set from the 52. That
no fisheye
nameplate, it doesn't have exactly. I think you said the fish eyes, like the bubble white print, that kind of thing, which is super common, obviously, for not only the issue, but in particular, doesn't it stink when that happens? That a certain issue will be common across the whole set, but for whatever reason, on the freaking Maze Rookie, it had to be a tough card, but it makes it all the more special when you find a really great looking copy.
It's like the Yaz with all those black ink spots all over it, and they go for a premium if you don't have that on there, just because it looks so much nicer. Like, of course, Yaz, man.
Yeah, exactly. You know what's funny? Just while we're on the topic of Yaz, I always associate Carl Yastrzemski. I played baseball growing up, and I was fortunate enough to play baseball at a tournament in Cooperstown. Okay, and my favorite part about that tournament was that I could go to the Hall of Fame and buy cards on Main Street when I wasn't playing baseball. I didn't care about playing baseball. I wanted to go to the Hall of Fame. And what was so cool is a shop, and I doubt they're watching, but if they are, so awesome. A shop called Yastrzemski Sports in Cooperstown used to be one of my favorite shops. I'd been to Cooperstown as a kid a few times, bought a lot from them. And one really cool moment, Ryan, was when I was working at SGC, and an order came in from Yastrzemski Sports, and it was just like very full circle. Really, I am, as you probably could tell, this is pretty much the most stressful thing you could do in life, but it is a dream job, man. This is so great.
Do you still have any cards from your childhood, or did you end up selling those out, or what happened with those?
It's funny you say that. I collected so much at so many different times. I was into memorabilia. I was an autograph chaser. I had a weird bobblehead obsession. So many times these cards would be sold to fund other collectibles, honestly. But I do actually at home. I have a box of. I mean, you want to talk about junky stuff? Unfortunately, if I would have got into these kinds of vintage cards when I was collecting those, I would have made a lot of money. That's for sure, and probably had a lot more of these Goudey Ruths for sure than just 1 and a 3. But I do have them, and they look a lot like that Mike Piazza 6-piece relic I showed you before.
Yeah.
All
right, let's take a look at some more.
Awesome. So next up we have, I'll change it up now. So actually, I'm also into Pokemon. I know a lot of these viewers might be like, whoa, 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 this was a great video until he said that. But I don't know how many Pokemon collectors are out there. But look, this card, we're talking my PC, so I'll tell you what I love. I grew up in the Pokemon era, and I have a very just a huge appreciation for the OG Pokemon back then. Charizard, Blastoise, Pikachu, Squirtle, Charmander. I'm not into the modern Pokemon as much, just because I don't know them as well. But this card for me kind of is my childhood as well, which is a
first edition too.
Blastoise Hollow in an SGC 5, and I had to throw that one in. But now I'll give you what you want to see. So basically, I actually, to be honest, Ryan, you mentioned you collect with your dad. My dad was the greatest guy ever, and honestly, the reason that I'm in this position and the reason that I was ever able to collect was my dad. And unfortunately, my dad is not doing well and is very sick at a younger age. And that gave me a very strong appreciation for Lou Gehrig for whatever reason. I started really PCing Lou Gehrig a lot. Just, I couldn't tell you why. Maybe it's the degenerative disease thing, but whenever I buy a Gehrig card, I feel like I'm almost paying tribute to my father. And
that's beautiful copy too.
Only about 10 cards, but 3 of them are Gehrigs, and it's kind of cool to see the different grades. Let me see. Right,
the 1 in the 5.5.
If I could buy 1,000 of these things, I would. It's really, in a sense, it makes it even cooler that they are so valuable, because it shows that there are other people like us that think they're so cool. But it's also a shame that they are so valuable, because man, would it be cool if we could just go through drawers of these things. But look, that is my high-end vintage PC. I also have a modern collection, which is much lower end than this. And I have just a PC like everyone else that's just kind of things I love, and I'll see it on eBay and think it's cool and snag it. But as far as like my real, almost if anything ever happened to me, the note to my wife, like, do not sell these cheap, those would be the cards for sure.
But definitely have to comp them out. Like, this is what this is worth. Don't go to a dealer and say, how much is this worth? All right, 20% on the dollar on this one.
I'll tell her to call you. You'll get me the right price.
Well, we're going to go through some Q&A, guys, maybe in the chat over here. And then I was going to ask one last question, too. I know you say you're a collector. Do you ever sell any of your cards and then try to upgrade them? Or when you buy a card, you're like, okay, like, for example, your T205 Cobb. I bought the T205 Cobb. That is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. I am never going to sell that card. What approach do you go?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm so happy you asked that, because naturally, whenever the CEO of a grading company was talking about all these cards that he has, and let's face it, guys, maybe some of you watching have a lot more opportunities than I do to buy these super high-end cards. But to me, these are big cards. So I want to clear things up as far as how I collect, just to almost give you the confidence that I'm doing this the right way. So for example, I told you about my Jackie in a 1.5. Okay, if I was a collector, I may very well review this. I may say, you know what? It's got a ton of wrinkles. I see the glue substance, but I think it may be a 2. In my position, I'm not sending this in for review and asking the graders to take a second look at it. In fact, the only cards that I'll ever actually grade with SGC honestly tend to be either worthless or I'm crossing it over from another company, because naturally my favorite grading company is SGC. But it's not the kind of thing. I've got that question a lot in the past. Do you review your cards? No, absolutely not. I usually reholder my cards. And then for a card like this, so this, when I say I have an appreciation for a diverse amount of cards, I mean it. This was in a PSA 7. That the card was on eBay in a PSA 7, so that I cracked out. Our graders were on the same kind of the same page as them, that it's a 7, and now I love it even more. And that's Harry Potter's, for any Harry Potter geeks out there, that's Harry Potter's wand, a piece of his wand from the actual Goblet of Fire movie, and it's numbered to 28. Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, that is freaking cool.
That is a definitely unique piece. I remember, I don't know, it was like 6 months ago, someone posted like a triple Harry Potter auto, did like crazy numbers. I can't remember who it was on there.
I'm very familiar with that card. In fact, that's kind of like my grail. Okay, right now I can't afford it because one just sold for 50 grand.
I was about to say, like, I knew it was like around that like 30K plus mark. I didn't know it went for 50 grand. Wow.
But that card, I grew up in a family of Harry Potter fans. Like I said, my dad played a huge role in my entire life. We were big Harry Potter fans, so the fact that I found a set that is just, by the way, so well done for the time period, I love it. And just before we get off that topic, one that's arguably even cooler. I think we posted this on SGC's Instagram when I had bought it. But that's a piece of the Sorcerer's Stone from the first movie, which, like I said, you may look at and be like, "Wow, this guy's weirder than I thought," but I love it.
No, it is cool though. I mean, everyone has their PCs, right? So
Yeah,
that's the best part of it. And it's all unique. Like no two individuals are going to have the same exact PC unless like you have two people collecting the same player. But beyond that, if you have like a wide diverse PC, that's the way to go.
totally, man. I also feel though that when you have the collector bug or gene, whatever you want to call it, I really happen to think that it's just education is what it is. Like I even mentioned before that I have an appreciation for the Pokemon I grew up with, much like, a vintage collector might want to collect the sets that they collected as a kid. However, if you develop a relationship or at the very least an understanding of other sets or other newer Pokemon, I bet you I'd love those too. It's just a matter of I'm just not aware right now, which to me is not only a big kind of one of the best parts about the hobby, but really in particular about working at SGC. You just learn so much about trading cards in general, and the education really never stops, which is just I love it. Really cool.
That's the best part. So now we're going to go through some questions, guys. I did miss some questions earlier. So if you guys have questions, please put it in the chat now and we'll do some Q&A over that. Just don't want to scroll up for forever because the chat's been super active today. So up first, we have Floating Heads. Is UV protection on the docket for his slabs in the future?
So the way that we basically go about that, I don't want to give much away on this front for reasons that I can't explain, which really stinks. I love to just tell everyone everything when I can. Let's put it this way. There are steps that we could make in the right direction in regards to that question. Naturally, you want to treat your cards like they're valuable and you cherish them. Again, you wouldn't probably leave a Ferrari out in the sun for a week to bake. You'd put it in the garage. So you want to take care of your cards. Another common question is, are they waterproof? They're not waterproof, and don't take your cards to the beach, and don't take your cards in the bathtub type thing. So again, would those protections be incredible? Yeah, they would. But if it means that I have to pay, $2-3 more per piece when it comes to the holder that I then have to transfer on to every collector who grades with us, unfortunately, it's not the case right now. So the general answer, if I'm just being kind of direct about it, is no, it's not UV protected. And I would definitely advise everyone, no matter what grading company you grade with, or if you keep your cards raw, just treat them well, and you won't have to worry about that.
So Neo has a question. How has the Pokemon special pricing been going for you guys?
What's up, Neo? How's it going, man? Appreciate the question. The Pokemon special has been going really, really, really well. Not to go on a monologue here, which I tend to do, but to put it simply, it's amazing to me that SGC didn't make their push into Pokemon sooner. The Pokemon community, and I think this is important to educate your audience, Ryan, because I tend to think they trend more on the sports side. Pokemon is everything amazing that the sports card hobby should look to emulate. The people that are collecting these Pokemon cards love the cards. They're not in it like a lot of the modern collectors today, primarily modern, that are buying a card to then plan to sell that card on X date. Or I'm buying this because I think this will happen, so I can then get rid of this card. Pokemon, they just love the card. They feel a connection to that character or that set or the story. And the bottom line is that SGC and what we provide is a unmatched turnaround time, affordable grading fees, accurate, and most importantly, honest and consistent grades. Okay? No upcharges on your Pokemon cards. It's really amazing to me that we didn't become kind of a go-to for Pokemon sooner. It's a product of our own, I guess, inactivity. But I really think, Neo, in regards to your question, we are seeing a ton of Pokemon. I think we're going to likely double our market share in Pokemon in a month. And even more than that, I think we're going to look back 2 years from now and we're going to see SGC 1 or 2. But maybe not 1. I don't want to overdo it here, but we're going to make major inroads. Look how good that looks. I mean, like, these people, like I said, they love their cards. They love their cards looking beautiful. And we have the best holder in the hobby when it comes to that. So, yeah, I think the Pokemon community is realizing that there's a better way to grade, hopefully.
It's a super dedicated community because, like, if you look at even the YouTubers on that side of things, you have many over 1 million subscribers, a lot over 100,000. Where like the sports card community or like vintage in general, there's very few, even at like 10,000 or 5,000.
Yeah, like I said, man, it's really a shame, if more, whether it's modern or vintage, if more people just loved cards and wanted to collect them, never wanted to let go of them, which is how I feel about my cards, that really that's the ecosystem we want to build. And it starts with educating people and invoking the feeling that I get when I hold up my cards, or Ryan, you get when you get that chase card that you've wanted so badly. So I really have a ton of respect for the Pokemon community. I really do. Some of it's a little, different than the way I collect, or wacky, or whatever you want to say. That's everything. But there's so much there that I love, and I think that SGC is a beautiful, it's like a match made in heaven, if that makes sense for that community.
I'm excited for you guys doing that. Hopefully you get some cross between Pokemon collectors getting the sports cards and then sports card collectors getting the Pokemon. It's the best way to grow both sides of the hobby.
What we've done in sports, I say it all the time, if we never got here, okay, and we didn't, scream the message loud and proud, I bet you the other grading companies would have higher fees, worse turnaround times, and they would never show their face like they're starting to now. I could promise you see people making messages behind desks all of a sudden and showing off their PC, and that came from a competitive push to make them do that, or they would fall behind, because SGC chose to push the envelope and continue to offer collectors just a better, fairer, more transparent and honest way to do it. So I really think, not only do I appreciate you saying that, Ryan, but I think that there's a lot of untapped potential where what we've done on the sports card side of things, we could not only apply to Pokemon, but who knows, man, years down the road, I really hope we're changing the minds of collectors in many ways. I mentioned autographs. We had an autograph department. Never say never. Maybe we bring that back and we again put the pressure on the competition to just make things better for collectors, because at the end of the day, if that is not what we're trying to do here, we're just a bad company.
So speaking of transparency, I have a question from Josh. He says, the recent video with Jeff and the graders was very informative, as what the graders were looking for in specific sets of years. Any plans for SGC to produce more content like that? I did enjoy that video quite a lot.
Thank you both. Really appreciate that. There are two things that I want to say about that video. The first is that video, if there's one thing that the Sports Card Investor team are experts at, guys, it's giving the people a video that they want to watch, if that makes sense. A video that they click and they watch fully through. And what that means is that it's often condensed. It's not 3 hours long. It's 15 minutes. We're in and out. So I want you to know there was so much more behind that video as far as training. We told it all, and unfortunately, just to make sure that everyone watched and enjoyed, we kept it, a little tight, let's say, but there was so much more information and lessons still to be learned. The biggest problem that we face, Josh, and I'm being totally transparent here, is we want to give you so much. The biggest problem that we face is that Instagram only allows us to put up videos that are a few minutes long, and we have no YouTube activity going on with our page. So we made this big video, this behind the scenes video about SGC, and it got less than 2,000 views. So we kind of felt like, man, we have no distribution here. We want to help collectors so much, but we don't have the vehicle. So the bottom line is, we want to make content with like that on a daily basis if you guys want it. I mean that literally. But unfortunately, we don't have sports card investors, unbelievably large following, So I think that's going to be a hurdle for us. How do we get this out, not just so that a handful of really dedicated collectors see it, but so the whole hobby sees it and can grow and learn from it. And that's a challenge that I need to attack kind of head on moving forward. But as far as content, we are going to be doing a podcast that I'm really, really excited for. As soon as we move, guys, we're building out this podcast room, building out the podcast itself. And I'm hoping that that just becomes the place to go if you're looking for real, authentic information, whether it's on grading, SGC, the hobby in general, cards. So the bottom line is, we wish we could put that content out more. We just don't have 200,000 subscribers. And unfortunately, a lot of you don't see it. Not enough of you see it. But we believe me, if there's one team that's not afraid to do it, it's us. I promise.
You guys should give the SGC YouTube channel a subscribe if you guys are watching right now. We have 130 people here, so hopefully you guys get some more subscribes. Not 100,000, but it's still a good portion.
Instagram, we've done a great job. We're almost at 40,000 on Instagram, and 2 years ago or so, it was about 600. So I'm pretty happy with that. But yeah, just to speak real with you, Josh, and transparently, that's the reason that the video wasn't even longer, and that's the reason that we're not putting out this kind of content on a more frequent basis, but we will be. Why the heck not?
So Orlando, the collector that had last week the full Goodwin Champs set, highest graded, said, "Will vintage cards cut short from the factory ever receive a numerical grade other than A?"
Yeah, so the answer to that can be yes, and the answer to that can be no at times. Okay, so for example, he used the word vintage. A modern card is what came to mind, but there are sets, as everyone out there I'm sure knows, where the cards are known to come short. That information is not only known by our graders. That's kind of, again, what you're getting with SGC, guys. We are real experts on the craft. Our graders, Scott, Doug, they know every single issue, how it's cut, what to look for, what edge will look funky in certain cases, and basically they factored that in. So if your card that comes short from the factory every time is even shorter than it usually comes, that's when we will A it and we'll say, you know what, you're out of bounds. This card is even shorter, imagine below the tolerance that we give it, in order to assess it with the most accurate grade, if that makes sense. So what we'll do is, if your card comes short, our experts are aware of that basically, and they have a tolerance in mind where they'll let it go shorter than a normal card, but there has to be a line there, because then what's stopping you from trimming a card that comes short, remember? So that's basically, again, if I'm speaking blanket policies, which is difficult, that's the best answer I give.
It's another question, and I know you're in your research department. Have you ever gotten a card and asked yourself, what the heck is this card?
Every day, every single day. I see cards in the operation today where I say, what the heck is this card? In fact, the grade of, we have a designation called cannot grade, or SGC does not grade. And the biggest reason for that is, if you send us a picture of your sister, we're not grading that. That's not a card type thing. So, we see it all at SGC, a lot of wacky stuff for sure.
And speaking like the do not grade stuff, Brad over here, he's a big vintage soccer collector. He says, why won't SGC grade blank back? I'm not going to butcher that. Cards, anything with a back, you do. Blank back's a no-go. And then vintage soccer, Italian issues. So I also sent us 1971 Burt Byleven rookie. That was a blank back. And I know you guys used to grade blank backs with baseball cards, but that was rejected too.
Yeah, the general stance, and I apologize, I didn't see that person's name, but the general stance that we take, again, hey Brad, the general stance that we take is one of, in all honesty, guys, safety. We would rather not do the issue, not call the card that, or not notate that variation if there's a fair chance that we're just wrong. You know, we don't pretend to be right ever. So if we don't know, we won't grade it, and if we don't feel comfortable, we won't grade it. So, for example, your blank back Blyleven, if I'm being honest, Ryan, is a little easier than that set, just because I am not familiar firsthand with that set that Brad was referencing. Although certain members of our team are, Brad. So what I would say is, if you haven't already, email support. I'll try to hook you up with like a real answer to that. I don't want to just gloss over it just because I don't have firsthand knowledge of it. But Ryan, with your 71 Blyleven, I do. And the reason that would be the case is there are a ton of these, call it freaks out of the factory, proofs out of the factory, uncut sheets, remember, that can then be cut off the sheet, and all of a sudden you have a gorgeous 10 that should not be gradable at all, you know. My assumption would basically be that the grading team just felt like they didn't know exactly what was going on here, where we couldn't say this is definitively the card or the case or what it is, and that's what ended up taking place from there.
Got it. A few more questions over in here. So this is an interesting one. Peter, do you ever...
Before I break off that topic, Ryan, additionally, when it comes to vintage cards, there were so many advertisements and things for the sets themselves where if cut out, they actually look like the card.
Yeah.
You know, so again, we don't play guessing games. That just doesn't happen. And unfortunately, I wish we knew even more, which is why we're always welcoming new information and educating ourselves so that we wouldn't have to say, no, we can't grade it because we'd be guessing. But unfortunately, this is a hard thing that we do, and I apologize to anyone that's ever felt that frustration.
So speaking of education side of things, I know like we have a lot of super like niche collectors on the channel. If they ever see like a wrong year on a card, how do they end up getting that fixed? Like I know you guys have changed the leaf labels from 1948 to 4849, and there's also a boxing set recently that you guys changed from 1953 to 48. But like on the music card side of things, there's a Victoria Vedette in 1969, Michael Jackson. But this was actually a 1973 release, but a lot of people now think it's a rookie card because it's a 69 versus his 71 Bergman. So how was like a change like that happen?
Well, naturally, whenever a card's sent in for reholder, you're going to have the label, the identifier applied to the label is going to be the most recent up-to-date identifier. So you're never going to be able to go back in time. It's always where we stand today when sending in a card for reholder. Naturally, if we made a mistake on a card, we would handle that a little differently than new information being brought to light in the hobby. You see what I'm saying? One is a clerical error, essentially, or a data error, or just an error on our part. And the other is, again, more of an evolution of the way that that card is thought to have come to be. So two different things. Naturally, I'd like to think there's not a better team in the hobby that assists with our mistakes, because that's just something as easy as me really making that a priority here, which I know we've done. But when it comes, that's a good question. When it comes to the more of an evolution of information that new info is brought to light, the way that it would work is when that information is presented to us, we have to do our own digging. Naturally, we can't just take someone's word for it. And if we agree, we'll make that change. And at that point, upon reholdering, we would basically have it corrected. If you have cards that happen to fall into that category, email support. We'll try to really kind of hook you up, because we're not trying to nickel and dime anyone for just wanting their set to be labeled right.
And is that the same with cards that end up getting like do not holder because you guys don't grade them? Like if you have more information on those sets, send it to support so then you guys could possibly grade those in the future? Or is there a different process on that side of things?
Yeah, these are really good questions, actually. The way that it works, Ryan, remember, when we, our support team is really fantastic. And I actually, believe it or not, I work very intimately with them. And it's always this fine line, because we want your card to be graded if it can be. If you have more information than us on a card that will assist us in boosting our confidence level in authenticating it, to then having it put in a holder, we want that information. But at the same time, the only thing worse than not grading a card the first time for
wrong info
is telling that collector, send us 20 pages of documents, go sit by a scanner and send us everything, just for us to tell them once more. Unfortunately, we still can't do it. So it's this fine line of customer satisfaction that we have to weigh. between actually thinking there is a good chance that new information will make this card gradable or at least be able to be authenticated. And again, not wanting an innocent collector to have to jump through hoops just to be told bad information almost twice. So that's hopefully that is lends some insight.
So this was an actually interesting question. So Peter, do you ever talk with CSG, PSA, or BGS leadership about how to grade or brainstorm? Because I've seen other YouTubers talk about, I wish all the big grading companies would got together and talked about like universal standards or something like that. So do you guys ever talk? Is this just like, nope, this is what we're focusing on. They're focusing on their own side of things, or how does that work?
Let's say this, guys. I am very different. And SGC, if I'm being honest with you, is very different from any other grading company. SGC is a company that from an ownership perspective, from a, call it leadership perspective, is the same company we were prior to the hobby boom back in 2020. Oh, sorry about that.
You're good.
Oh boy. There we go.
Working now.
But anyway, what I was saying is that I was basically kind of elevated to the role of director of operations back in 2019. Okay, so essentially I've been the leader here for many years. Every other company, if I'm not mistaken, has a leader that joined in the boom, shortly after the boom, and they're different than I am. You could probably see that. Let's put it this way: I'm not helpful to many goals that large corporations have when it comes to having an amazing P&L and balance sheet. Because at the end of the day, if the guy over there says he's not going to charge for autograph grading on modern cards, or he's going to not upcharge for turnaround time and just tell you, no, they all take 5 business days. I don't need an extra $100 because you're cutting the line. I can stay with a staff that's healthy to serve you. I don't need to be as lean as possible in order to make as much money as possible, and you have to wait. And if you don't want to wait, you pay me more. In other words, we're disruptors. And I think it's fair to say that I'm a little different when it comes to the guy in charge, and so is the path that SGC has paved for itself. But generally speaking, I am very confident that when it comes to the actual authenticating and grading of cards, no one does it better than SGC at the moment. And I have a lot of respect for PSA. I think that what they have had to call it tackle as a company is a lot. I mean, let's face it, guys, like that's a lot of cards, right? You can have a respect for the challenge, basically. And that's what I'd say. I wish that we could all huddle together and be on the same page as grading. But if I'm being honest with you, I think that I don't want to. Sometimes I'm too transparent and honest.
No, you're good. You're good. We'll go to the next question. And this was something I meant to bring up, but I did not. When you were talking about how inaccurate are pop reports with the cracking craze lately, and I'm guessing there's going to be wild variances between vintage and modern.
Yeah, so that I wouldn't know any better than you guys. Naturally, we all know cards are cracked. That is a practice that takes place. I think with vintage and modern, it's kind of the same thing. Remember, if we know a card is cracked, we can act with that information in mind. Naturally, most of the time, it's not known that a card has been cracked, which is why that's kind of just the nature of the grading industry itself, which is that you grade a card with PSA, you don't like the grade, you can send it to SGC, and if you don't like that grade, you can send it back to PSA. That is definitely a thing, and to pretend it's not is just not helpful to the hobby.
Are you guys ever going to have some SGC merch available? I know you guys had it at the National, but Corey wants either a hat or a shirt.
Yeah, the difficult thing with that, honestly, is that I love giving merch away. It's such an honor to be leading the company now of this size and with this unbelievably supportive community around us. So again, I never want to be that guy that's buying a hat for $12 and then selling it to you for $22 or whatever it is. I'd rather just say, hey, thank you for your support. There you go. In the past, we've always done it the gifting route and not made anyone pay. What I'm finding is that everyone wants these things, and if I keep giving everything away, I can't make it happen. So I think what is going to be taking place in the near future is I think we're going to be making a very large order of some really kind of kick-ass merchandise that we can kind of hopefully it's a mix where everyone can have access to it because you can buy it. But as hopefully you all are confident with our team, we like to be, the good guys, and we wanna make our supporters happy. So I'm sure we could help you guys out with that as well.
So I already kind of know what your answer is going to be, but Peter's asking why you guys want great coins or buttons that are all left with PSA and etc.
Yeah, so definitely a good question. When it comes to, it depends because coins are very broad. Okay, there are coins in the sports world, but then there's also coins that have absolutely nothing to do with sports or trading cards at all. When it comes to sports coins, imagine something like the old pins, okay, from the early tobacco days. I think we would grade those if we had the holder to accommodate them. They're naturally very different from any other issue that we grade when it comes to trading cards, so we just kind of haven't. But those I don't even want to refer to them as verticals, but those other categories are we agree with you. There really isn't a great reason why not, but it's also important. I'm telling you guys, if this job was easy, I wouldn't be here. Let's put it that way. It's a really hard job with an incredible amount to prioritize and weigh. And there are almost these landmines along the way, guys, that must be avoided because, again, you grow too quickly, you ruin the integrity of the product. And that is just the worst situation possible. So right now we're trying to focus on trading cards for at least when I say the near future, we're always going to be focused on trading cards, but I just mean devoting absolutely every bit of our time, attention, and resources. And if we ever feel comfortable enough where we're not sacrificing any of that to move elsewhere, I can promise you we will be doing so, and we will be bringing along all of hopefully the goodwill that we work so hard to build in our community, along with it.
A lot of people are joking, saying you guys should sell.
Just even that, guys, I think it's very important. Unfortunately, when I speak in short spurts. Ryan, we're a nice amount of time into this video, but honestly, I wish I could do these kinds of videos every night. I just love talking the hobby, SGC, cards, but at the end of the day, that's not the case. You only get so much information. I do want to clarify, guys, okay? The landscape right now in grading is competitive. It is. What I feel very passionate about, the collector in me, is that grading should always come first. Okay, grading, the authenticity, what we're here to do should always come first. And honestly, the collectors who got us all here, who we need to treat well, or this whole hobby's not going to be here, they come first as well. I guess what I'm saying is, generally speaking, there isn't as much in common company to company as one might think. Not all grading companies are the same and go about things the same way. I'm mentioning that we don't want to branch out into a million other things because we take the work that we have in front of us so seriously. Naturally, I'm alone in that mindset. I mean, everyone out there is grading, VHS tapes and pretty much, this Sharpie marker if they can. So it's just a different mindset. But please, it's a tough job I have here, guys, to be honest with all of you, to be this passionate, but also, of course, maintain the level of professionalism and everything that goes along with it. So the last thing I want to do is offend anyone or step on anyone's toes, guys. Definitely not.
So a few people have said this throughout the stream, but they definitely want to see autograph authentication come back. And then a few other people were saying SGC should sell tuxedos or a tuxedo shirt. Yeah. That would be pretty funny, though.
One thing in regards to autograph authenticity, if I'm being honest, I think if we were to kind of branch out of I don't want to say branch out of our comfort zone, but move into something else, I think that would definitely be the thing. I'm very honest about why we haven't done it yet. I think that there are autograph authenticity is that's a tough game.
It's a nightmare, man.
Like we had we had one of the best authenticators in the world when we had a department. And the truth is, we authenticated autographs that were no good. And guess what? If you held that autograph up to Ty Cobb's autograph or up to anyone else it is Ty Cobb's autograph. It's a little scary, but it wasn't done by Ty Cobb. That's possible, guys. Like that's possible.
Not just auto pen as well. Like there's professional forgers that literally get it to the T. It's scary.
Yeah, and the thing with cards is I'm very confident that we've never graded a fake. I don't mean altered. Look, let's face it, companies make mistakes. But a fake Goudey roof, no, not SGC. When it comes to autographs, we can't really ensure that level of confidence. However, there are different ways we can, approach it. So we'll see. It's not off the table, guys, but please know it's certainly not a laziness factor. We're definitely not brushing aside your preferences or desires for what SGC should do next. Not at all.
So we're going to take a few more questions, but while you guys are on here, we are doing group subs now. That is live on the website. If you guys want to send in some cards, every card that is graded will be shown on the channel as well. And if you guys want to sell it, I can name your price in the video when I share the results. But we have three-wheeler over here that's saying non-sports market exploding, growth is overwhelming. So like from that side of things, I know a lot of non-sports cards have never been graded before, especially releases, let's say in Latin America or Europe or even Japan and Asia. Like, how do you guys deal with all those brand new sets coming in?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, naturally, we have a tremendous amount of resources at our disposal. But again, that doesn't always make it easy, So what we have to do is ensure that we are calling something or, I guess identifying something or chronicling something in our system as accurately and again consistently looking historically as we have, But generally speaking, a ton of research. We don't have. Remember, you don't know what the cards are because there's no great resources on them.
There really isn't for non-sports.
We may be dealing with a similar issue on our end. Naturally, we tend to know, we have a very large team here. So we tend to know more than your average collector, obviously. But that doesn't mean that we've seen a ton of these things or we have all the answers by any means.
And then probably one last question from Hunter over here, and we're going to call it a wraps, guys. Thank you for checking out the PC and also the series, which we have every Thursday around 8 o'clock, but sometimes it can change as well. But we have Hunter over here says, what's the difference in do not grade, too small to holder, graded, and minimum size not met?
So again, I hate giving this information, so I hope I'm understanding your specific situation correctly. Too small to holder. I mean, again, I don't know what card we're referencing. I mean, maybe you had a very, just because minimum size not met is usually the designation that's applied to a card that isn't necessarily deemed to be trimmed or altered, but is just short. It's just below our tolerance. Something that's do not grade too small to holder could be, let's say you said that you were not taking authentics. So in other words, if you don't grade it numerically, don't encapsulate it. It could be that your preference was off. The only other thing I could think is if you had some sort of really wacky issue. Again, I don't know what the card submitted was, but I doubt
maybe an R243 because those are pretty small.
But even those, I believe we grade. I mean, I'm thinking of the smallest cards that we grade. We do the 55 Magic photos? Are they 1950?
Oh, the 55 sports, the one that has a Bill Russell in it, or is it? Or no? Oh, you're talking about the 48 photos as well, like those really really small ones, the first set.
Yeah,
the backs as well, like 49, 50.
I think of how small we get, and I've seen how small we get, and it's quite small. So my assumption is that when submitting, guys, make sure if you want the card to be encapsulated, regardless of numerical grade or not, make sure that A is okay is checked off on your submission, because we'd hate to do something against, obviously, one of our submitters' preferences.
You said it was a 51 Wheaties. Maybe the border was completely off or something like that.
The only thing that I could think is many times cards like that, especially that are hand cut, are so cut down. And if a specific card is so cut down that a significant portion of the card is missing, we almost feel like it's more of a part of a card rather than a card itself. So imagine if I took this Willie Mays and I die cut Willie out of the card, we would not even authenticate that because you no longer have a 51 Bowman Mays. You have a piece of a 51 Bowman Mays.
Yeah. Any last questions, guys? If not, that's it for the stream. Thank you guys for hanging out. This was really awesome. And thank you, Pete, as well.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a pleasure, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. You know, I could tell you one thing. I absolutely, this was a blast, Ryan. I love talking. The love of cards is my favorite conversation to have. And, you know, we're just here to hopefully make the hobby better. And my sincere hope is that everyone watching at least feels like SGC is doing the hardest that they can. Not everyone has to love us or love really anything about us, but just know, guys, that we are here for the right reasons. We actually love this as much as all of you. We take it as seriously as much as all of you. And although it's a tremendous challenge to provide such a nuanced service to so many people, we really are doing our best, guys. And just know that truly the best is yet to come from SGC. This SGC thing, we've been here for a long time, guys, but we've really kicked it in gear the last 2 years. Let's see what happens in the future. I think we're going to continue to grow the SGC brand across the hobby, and that's thanks to all of you. So thank you so much to everyone listening. I hope I hope I got it right this one.
Absolutely. And guys, next week we're going to have Card Story from Twitter. He has his threads every single Wednesday where the whole vintage community is over there. So you guys can check out his pre-war collection at 8 Eastern. All right, guys. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Go.